Hi, my name is Amy Boyd. I'm a cloud advocate at Microsoft and I specialise in AI and machine learning. In this video, we're going to talk a bit about the Hacking with Microsoft Azure GitHub repository and some of the machine learning content that I've built with inside there. So let's go over to the GitHub repo and take a look. This is a 60-minute cloud application workshop called Creating an Endangered Animal Detector Cloud Application. We're going to be using lots of different interesting technologies on the Azure platform, and these are all platform as a service offerings. So we're going to look at things like the Azure Custom Vision Service, Azure Logic Apps, Azure Storage Accounts, and there's also some bonus content that will be available around Microsoft Power Apps as well as Office 365. I just wanted to talk through some of the trainer resources we've put together, as well as some of the prerequisites for this workshop. So in the Student Hack Resources GitHub account, we can see that we have the Create an Endangered Animal Detector Cloud application page. This README will take you through step by step how to create it, as well as via watching this video where I'll demo the same application. There are some prerequisites for your machine that you should consider. I'd highly recommend cloning this repository if you're a GitHub user, or also you can actually just download the zip file from the main page, and in there you'll get all the resources you need for this workshop. Also, the only other thing you're going to need, you don't need anything to be downloaded on your machine. You're going to need a Microsoft Azure subscription. You've potentially got them through your student institutions. And then next up is a laptop with a modern web browser. So think Microsoft Edge, think Google Chrome, etc. I've tested all of these on a Windows PC. However, these should all, from my understanding, work on a Mac OS as well as Linux machines. If you do find that there's any differences from the content if you use them on different operating systems, please do feel free to submit an issue or pull requests as well to the repository, and we can update that content. There are different sections that I've broken this workshop down into. So section 1, we're going to create the actual intelligence behind the application, so the Azure Custom Vision Service, where we will create the Endangered Animal Detector classification algorithm. And if you click on any of these links, it will take you to the README page to get started there. Section 2 is the Azure Logic Apps. So I think of this as the glue between the intelligence and the application. And so the ability to be able to pass great business processes and useful bits of information. In this one, we're actually going to analyze the image and drop it into a storage account. Then finally, there is a bonus section around Microsoft Power Apps. Do feel free to take a look at that after you've completed the Azure Custom Vision and the Azure Logic Apps. Inside the 60-minute workshop, I'd highly recommend looking at sections 1 and 2, and maybe leaving section 3 for each of your attendees to check out afterwards. I will show you only probably 2 or 3 different technologies that you can use in this space. However, if you're really interested and keen to learn more after taking this workshop, then do recommend to take a look at the Microsoft Learn modules here. So one's around both the Custom Vision Service, dive deeper into Logic Apps, maybe look at building your own custom connectors and how that works, as well as anything extra you want to learn about Microsoft Power Apps. Okay, so let's get started. First things first, the link at the bottom will send you over to the instructions where we're going to start section 1. In this section, we're going to create our Azure Custom Vision Service. So this is actually going to create the classification algorithm or the intelligence that's going to power how we're going to detect endangered animals that are out there. Again, we've got a nice README file here called Endangered Animal Detector Intelligence. And in this file, you can see it's got step-by-step instructions of all of the demos that we're about to go through now. So I highly recommend keeping a link to this repository so that you can come back and take a look at the instructions. So first things first, I've actually provided you some images, and we're going to create a 3-class classification algorithm where each of these classes has 45 different examples of images in them. 3 classes of images we've got are Arctic fox, polar bear, and walrus images. So we've got 45 Arctic foxes, 45 polar bears, and 45 walruses. There's also a set of separate test images. So these aren't for training. In machine learning, we're going to train on a set of data, and then we're going to hold back a set of data that the algorithm has never seen before, that we can actually test on to check that the algorithm is doing what we expect, and also to good accuracy. If we were to test on the same images that we trained on, it would look like our classification algorithm had done a really good job. But realistically, when it got out into the wild, literally, and was able to take in real images of all of these different animals, it might not do as well. So first thing to do here is, if you click on the link to the available zip file, you can simply click on the download button, and it will download the images just here. So if we search to show in folder, okay, so I've downloaded it into my demo folder as a zip, and if I then extract all of the images here, we can see, we click into this folder, we can see we've got our 3 Arctic fox, polar bear, and walrus folders, as well as our test image folders. So let's take a look at what some of these images look like. So these are some pictures of our Arctic fox. We've provided you with 125. We're not going to use them all, but feel free to add further to your classifier if you wish. Then we've got polar bears in here. We've got walruses in here. And then finally, in our test images, we've got about 10 of each. So we've got 10 Arctic foxes, 10 polar bears, and 10 walruses that we can test our algorithm against. So let's keep these images handy, as we're going to need them in a moment. Okay. So next up, what we're going to do is we're actually going to head over to Microsoft Azure, and we're going to create a custom vision service. So I'm in Microsoft Azure here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to create a resource at the top. I'm going to type in custom vision, and we should see this icon here, and I'll click the create button. So once we click the create button, it will ask us for a little bit of information to set up the custom vision prediction service. So I'll give it a name, something like Student AI Project. And once it's a good name, it will give you a little green tick. I'll then choose my subscriptions. This is my Azure subscription. I'm then going to choose a location close to me. So I'm based in Europe, so I'm going to choose North Europe. For the prediction pricing tier, if you can, choose the free one. You get 1 free custom vision service per subscription. I have more than one, so I'm going to use the SO version, which is actually the standard version you would use for production. And then same with the training pricing. If you can, select the free version. I'm going to select the standard version. Then under resource group, I'm actually going to create a new resource group. A resource group is like a folder where we're going to keep all of the stuff for this workshop or this project inside of it. So I'll call this Student AI Project, and it gives me that little green tick again. I click OK and I click create. Once it's succeeded, you can actually click on Go to Resource, and under there what you'll see is that you can get all of these great information, including your keys, your endpoint, some getting started around how to make a call to the API, etc. For now, all we're going to look at is just the basics, and we're going to use it in a moment. So once we've created our cognitive services custom vision service inside the Azure portal, We then need to go to customvision.ai in order to sign in and use the UI to create our classifier. In this workshop, we're going to use the UI. It's a nice, quick and visual way to learn. However, you can also use the SDK and any APIs to actually do all of this programmatically. So if I click sign in, it's going to sign into my accounts and it will load any previous projects I've created. As you can see, I've got lots and lots of different projects, but I can also go to a specific resource group and we can see here that I have my student AI project that I created. So I don't have anything in here yet. So let's create our first project by clicking on new project. Let's give it a name. So we'll call this Endangered Animals V2. The description of this is a classifier to recognize endangered animals. We're going to choose a resource group, so I'm going to choose the Student AI project resource group that I just created. The project type is a classification project. We're going to give it images, and each image is going to be associated with a specific class. We do also have the opportunity to build object detection. Object detection is where we can detect specific objects with inside images and actually put a bounding box around them. So in this case, keep it is classification. Under classification types, if you ever hover over one of these information links, it will tell you more about what each of these options mean. But in this case, we're actually going to use multi-class, where there's a single tag per image. So we're going to provide it an image of an Arctic fox, and we're going to tag it with a single tag that will say that is an Arctic fox. If you have more complex scenarios, you could choose the multiple tags per image. So say we had the chance to see an Arctic fox and a polar bear in the same image, you would actually be able to tag them both in that image then. In our case, we're going to keep it to one tag per image. And then under domains, domains is the actual model that sits underneath the Custom Vision service. The Custom Vision service is all based on transfer learning. And what that means is we have built a deep learning model basically underneath it, where we have trained it to recognize pretty general things, or maybe food, or maybe landmarks, or maybe retail. And then what you're going to do is you're actually going to specialize the last layer of that neural network or of that algorithm, and then that is going to allow you to train your own classifiers. So in this case, because we're doing animals, we'll choose the general domain, and then you click create project. Once you load the project, you'll notice this, we go to this like workspace, and this is where we're going to start creating our classification algorithm. So first things first, let's get some images in that we're going to tag. So if we click on the add images button here, or up here on the left, we can go and search for our resources. So we can see here, we've got our extracted image folder. If I go into Arctic fox, and if I choose, what do we go? We go from 0, 0. So if I choose the first 45 images and click open, you'll notice here that we can see all the images that I've selected. We've got 44 images, and we're going to add some tags to these, so we can add a tag to the whole batch. So in here, I can type Arctic fox, hit enter, and it adds it as a tag, and I upload those 44 files where they're all tagged with the tag Arctic fox. Okay, and once they're uploaded successfully, we can see that they are now all in our workspace. So that's one class. We actually want to add some more. So let's go ahead and do exactly the same thing, but for polar bears. We'll add polar bears as a tag, and we'll upload them. Now we can see our polar bears have landed, and then finally, our final class is walrus. So we'll select a set of our walruses. We'll type in the tag walrus and we'll upload them. Okay, now we have all of our images of walruses, polar bears and Arctic foxes, and we can see how many we've got per category here. What we want to do now is we want to train the algorithm to start learning from these images. So it is as simple as clicking on the green train button at the top here, opt in for fast training and clicking the train button. Once trained, it's going to come back on the performance tab with some metrics. So it's done a really good job here of learning about walruses, polar bears and Arctic foxes. We can see the precision and recall and performance measures of all of the different categories as well as overall. And this is our first iteration on working with this classification algorithm. But the proof is in the pudding, as people say. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this quick test button up here to actually test our classifier. So let's browse for our local files and actually go to our test images and put in a picture of an Arctic fox. It's uploaded that, classified it and said it's 99.9% sure that this is an Arctic fox and it doesn't think it's a polar bear or a walrus. So that's good, that's what we expect. Let's also do that for a polar bear. Let's choose a picture of a polar bear and it's got polar bears at 100%. And then finally, let's do a final test on walrus. And we can see it says walrus at 100%. So our classifier is doing a really good job. You're not always going to get that though when you first create a classification algorithm. So how can we make this algorithm even better by the new images that we give it? If we close the quick test and we go into the predictions tab at the top here, you'll see that the 3 images that I just uploaded have now landed in kind of like a retraining environment, I like to think of it as. So now when we click on one of these images, it says, well, the classifier classified it as a walrus, but actually we can add and say, yes, that was correct, it's a walrus tag, click save and close, and now that walrus has disappeared from our predictions, but if we go into training images, we can now see that walrus image is part of our training. So if we do that for all 3 of these, and we go and we say, yeah, this was an Arctic fox, it got it correct, and save that. And the same for the polar bear. And we click save and close. We now don't have anything to improve our model here, but what we want to do is we want to go over to training images. We see those 3 images are now added. It's also added them onto the values here. We can click train again. And now we're on iteration 2. So it saves previous iterations. If your metrics don't make sense, or maybe it's made a detrimental effect on the thing, you don't have to necessarily use it. You could always go back to iteration 1. So now we're happy with our iteration 2, we can actually, how do we get access to this outside of this environment? Well, one thing we can do is we can actually publish it as a prediction API. If we click on the publish button here and we name this model name is actually iteration 2, and then we just need to choose our prediction resource. So we created Student AI Project _ prediction as a service. So you should then be able to see the same name _ prediction in your resources and click publish. That's now published it as an API, and we can get all of the information we need from the prediction URL given here. So if we are giving it an image URL, we use the information at the top. If we are giving it a file as an image, we use the information at the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and use all of this information and actually use it inside an Azure Logic app. Okay, so we were able to publish our intelligent API, and that has brought us to the end of the classification model section. To continue the workshop and build it into a pipeline, click on the link at the bottom of that documentation page. And that will take you directly to the Azure Logic Apps page. In this process, we're going to actually take the classification model we'd already made, the Endangered Animal Detector application, and we're actually going to use a serverless process to create a pipeline that will get the image, analyze it, and then put it into a blob storage account. So first things first, the instructions again will tell you all of the different steps that you need to do in order to create this pipeline. But what I'll do is I'll demo it for you so you have that to follow along to as well. So let's head over to Azure, where the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create 2 Azure storage accounts. So if I go to create a resource and I type in storage account, you'll notice this is the icon to create a simple Azure Blob Storage account or an object store. Click create. In this, we're going to ask for some basics about your storage account. So in the subscription, I choose my subscription, and under resource groups, I'm going to choose the resource group we just created, which was Student AI Project. For storage account name, this name has to be unique. So what I'll do is I'll call this E for endangered, A for animals, D for detector, dash Amy Boyd. Oh, apologies, can't put dashes in. So we'll have E for endangered, A for animal, D for detector, Amy Boyd. You could put endangered animal detector and then your name or your alias or your initials or something like that, and then you know it's a unique name for the storage account. Put it into the location that's closest to you, so I'm going to opt for North Europe again. Under performance, choose standard. Under account kind, we're only using it for Azure Blob Storage, for object storage. We're not going to use properties such as file shares, table storage or queues, and so we can just choose the blob storage option. For replication, we're just going to choose locally redundant storage. We're not too worried about the images we're going to put in this storage account. However, if you are ever looking at putting something into production, we highly recommend geo-redundant storage as the option. Access tier, this isn't an archive option. We're going to be accessing this data, so let's say choose it as hot. Then we're going to click review and create. So that is, it's passed all the validation. It says, yep, you can create this, click the create button. And that is now storage account number 1 underway doing its creation. So what we'll do is we'll create storage account number 2. So let's create a resource. You can choose storage account from down here or type in storage account again and click create. We're going to choose all the same things, so we're going to put it in the Student AI project. This time we're going to call it Endangered Animal Detector Results Amy Boyd. So we've got unique because it's got my name in it, results because this is where the results or output to the data storage account is going to be. Under here, we're going to choose the closest one. So the closest one is North Europe. Standard, we're going to choose blob storage again because we're not using the other features. We're going to choose locally redundant storage and hot, review and create. Validation is passed. Here's all the information about it, click create. And now that one has also gone to be deployment underway. If you're ever wanting to look at what's happening, you'll notice there's a notifications icon up here with a little loading option. We can see that the deployment has succeeded from our cognitive services one. We also have one of our storage accounts that succeeded, so let's go to that resource. That was the Endangered Animals Detector Amy Boyd account. In each of these accounts, we're now going to add a container. So if we click on blobs, you'll notice there's this plus container. Container is like a folder where we're going to be able to access some of our images. So what we'll do is we'll add a container called images, and we'll set the access level to a container level so that we can actually access that from other resources. Click OK. And now you notice we have an image container. If we click into that, we're later going to come and upload files to it. So this is just an object storage. Think of any other object storage where you store data such as OneDrive and stuff like that. Let's go back up to our notifications. We can see our second storage account has been created. So this one's called results. we're going to do exactly the same thing, but for this container, we're going to call it results, and we're going to use the same public access level, which is container level. Okay, and again, when we go into results, we have all those options to upload. So let's take a quick look at our resource group and see all the things that we've created so far. So under Student AI Project, we can see we've got our 2 storage accounts, one where we're going to put the images and one where we're going to put the results. And we've also got our custom vision service here. One more thing that we're going to want to add to this is a logic app. So we can click add from the top of the and type in logic app. So then once we've got logic app there, we're just going to click on the create button, same as we did with the storage account, same as we did with the custom vision service. Again, it's going to ask us for some simple information. So let's call this endangered animal detector app. Choose my subscription. We want to use our existing Student AI Project resource group. My nearest location is North Europe, and log analytics we're going to keep off in this case. And click the create button. That got validated. The deployment's in progress. We can view that progress by clicking on that, and what you'll notice is it actually deploys very, very quickly. So we click go to resource here, and it will automatically take us to the designer. Something to note just before we continue is if we go back to our resources and we scroll down a little bit, so we've seen we've done all this bit. Something to note is this is the first time we're going to use something called Microsoft Event Grid here. What Microsoft Event Grid does is it sends a notification every time something particular we've asked for happens inside our Azure subscription. So in our case, it's going to be whenever we create a blob or an object inside our blob storage account, it's then going to trigger this process. And that's what we want to do. But so the first thing you have to do is make sure you go to subscriptions, find resource providers, and then make sure that the Event Grid option is registered. If it's not, you can find it, click the register button, wait for it to be registered, and once there's a green tick, you'll be at the section that we're at now. So just a note there, it is all in the instructions. If you go through the instructions step by step, you will see that part. Mine is already registered, so we'll continue on. Once we're in Azure Logic Apps, the one we're going to choose is actually when an Event Grid resource event occurs. So when that blob or that object is put into our storage account, in which this case it's going to be an image of a fox or a walrus or a polar bear, it's then going to kick off our Logic App flow. So let me click on that one. And what it's going to do, it's going to take us to our Logic App Designer workspace, where it will say, okay, you need this Event Grid option. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in to my Microsoft account. So this might be your student Azure subscription account. Once I've signed in, you'll notice that my options are in there, and I click continue. Now we have a connection to my Azure subscription. What we're going to do is we're going to choose the subscription. So mine is my Amy Nick demo test one. So this is the one I've been using throughout the demo. The resource type that I want to monitor is actually going to be, once it loads, if we scroll down, the Microsoft storage accounts option. And then the resource name is going to be the Endangered Animals Detector Amy Boyd, where we put the images container. Inside there, we're going to say what type of event type. Well, in this case, it's going to be blob created, but you can also do the same thing for deleted, renamed, or change of directory as well. And once we're happy with that, we click next step. So when a resource event occurs, so when an image is put into an Azure Blob Storage account, what do we want to do with it? Well, in this case, we want to get that information and we want the URL of the Azure Blob Storage. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Data Operations and we're going to go to Parse JSON Data Operations. This is going to allow us to take the JSON request that comes from that notification and extract the information we need from it. So when we click under content, one of the nice things about Logic Apps is you'll see all of the information that you can use in handy little UI snippets. So we could take anything. We're going to take the body of the JSON object, but it could be the event time, the ID, the subject of the event, the resource that gives you a nice little explanation here as well, or you can even create different expressions as well. We're going to keep it fairly simple and mainly use the dynamic content. In the schema, what on earth does this schema look like? Well, one of the nice pieces here is I've actually provided you the schema. So if we scroll down and we find the parse JSON object in the settings, what you'll notice is I've linked this Logic App schema JSON1. So if I go to this, you can download it if you wish, download the raw file, or what we're going to do is I'm just going to highlight and copy and paste it. So go back to the Logic Apps Designer, I'm going to paste in that object, and this basically, you'll notice, just describes the content and the blob of the object in our Azure Storage account. Now the key thing we're actually going to use is this, and that's the URL to the Azure Blob Storage account. So click Save and click Add New Step. So now we have the URL from the Azure Blob Storage account for the image. What we want to do is we want to send that image to our custom vision service. You can type in custom vision up here and it will show you all the different things that you can use. We're going to classify an image URL. Under connection name, we're going to give it a name. So we'll call this our intelligence endangered animal detector. Prediction key. Where are we going to get our prediction key from? Well, we need to get our custom service prediction key. So let's, one thing you can do is you can go to your resource group and go from there. Well, a really neat thing I found recently was if you click in the top here, it will show you all the recent things that you've been using. So we can go to my resource group real quick. We can go to the prediction API. And we can use the key and copy it here. And then we can go back up here. We can go back to our Logic App. This is the main page. We were in the Logic App Designer. And we're just gonna have to quickly add that bit again. So if we go custom vision, classify an image URL. Connection name was intelligence endangered animal detector. The prediction key and the site URL, if it's not specified, we can actually get that from here as well in our custom vision service. So we can see the endpoint here is actually northeurope.api.cognitive.microsoft.com. So if we paste that into there, you can also get this from the same place you got your prediction key. And click create. Okay, once we've got our connection made, so we've got all the right keys, now we need some information about the specific project. So let's find our project ID. If we go to our custom vision service, you'll notice in the settings at the top right, our project ID just sits here. Let's copy that and paste it into there. The published name, again, let's go back to custom vision. Let's go to our performance tab where we can see our published option of training, and it is published as iteration 2. So I'm going to copy that and I'm going to put it in the published name. And then finally I need to pass it the image URL, but this is going to dynamically change depending on what image I pass in here. So if I click on image URL, I can go down to my parse JSON and I should be able to find the URL option, and I'm going to pop that in there. Then I'm going to save this section and I'm going to click next step. Next up, we actually need to say, okay, what we're going to get out of this is a set of predictions. We're going to get a prediction for each class inside the project. So we're going to get a prediction for Arctic Wolf, a prediction for Walrus, and a prediction for Polar Bear every time we do it. But we only want to provide the output for the highest probability value. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose the control option, or if you type control, it will come up, and this gives you things like for each loops, if statements, switch statements, things you'll be used to if you do a computer science degree. So in this case, we're going to choose a for each, and we need to select an output from all of these previous steps. So in here, we're actually going to choose the predictions from classify an image URL. So we're going to say for each prediction that is made, so our 3 classes, so each time this is run, 3 of these are looped, we're going to add an action. Under add action, we're going to use control again, and then choose condition, because we're going to do an if statement. Under value here in the if statement, we're actually going to choose the predictions probability. So this is how confident it is. Once we've chosen prediction probabilities, we're going to say if it is greater than 0.7, because one thing to remember is each of our predictions, like when it was a wolf and it was sure it was a wolf, it said it was 100% or 1 confident that it was an Arctic wolf, but walrus and polar bear were set to 0, so they wouldn't make it through this if condition, and so only the highest ranking one, and we've put 0.7. You could put a different value, but it's normally pretty confident and that you're going to get the right tag if it's a higher probability. So for each prediction, if the prediction probability is greater than 0.7 or it's the more recognised class of object, then under if true, we're going to add an action. Under here, we're going to choose the Azure Blob Storage. So again, you can type it in, Azure Blob Storage. And from there, we're actually going to create a blob. I'm going to give it a connection name. We'll call it Endangered Animal Detector Results. And I'm going to choose my Endangered Animal Detector Results Amy Boyd storage account and click Create. Now we've connected to our Azure Blob Storage account, we actually want to give it some information about the blob we're going to create. So in this case, we're going to first choose a folder path. If we click in here, it's going to give us all of this information, but actually what we want to do is click on the folder icon, where it will tell us what container it actually has available. And so we'll click on that results container. So the folder path is going to say, create this blob and put it in the results container. The blob name, we want it to be an identifier really, we want it to be unique. So something that I did was I actually said, I'm going to use the ID as the blob name and then do .csv on the end. So it creates a very simple CSV file for us. And then what do we actually want to put in our blog content? Well, again, what I'm going to do is under here, I'm going to use our dynamic content. And from here, I'm going to click, you'll notice it doesn't have any options in right now. So I'm going to click see more, and then it gives us all of those ones. What I'm going to do is in the content, I want to do the prediction tab, and then I want to do a colon, and then I'll click see more again, and I want to put the prediction probability in there. And once we've done that and we're happy, I'm going to click save, and it's saved the Logic app. And then now we need to actually test that the Logic app is working. So one of the things I'm going to do is we can actually test it whilst we're building it. So if I click on this run button up here, click run, and it says perform the starting action to view how this run basically changes. So let's use our quick recent drop down box. And if I go to the storage account where I'm actually going to upload an image, so I go to the blobs, I go into my images folder and I click upload. I'm going to select a file, and I've got my test images here. So I'm going to select this Arctic fox file and click open. I'm going to upload that. It says it's uploaded successfully. Now I'm going to go back to my Logic app, and what we'll notice is that a minute ago this actually succeeded. We can click on the status and it will show us the successful run that it did. So the resource event occurred, and we can see the inputs and the outputs for that resource event. We can see that the image got classified, so it's got its ID. This is the image that was passed to it. And we can see in the outputs here that 3 probabilities were given to us of Arctic fox, polar bears and walruses. So this is like what we see if we just do a simple REST call. But the important bit was the logic, right? So for each, you'll see this 3, show one of 3 different ones. Click on condition. If the condition was true, we created a blob and then we put it in the results folder. This is the name of the file and this is the contents of the file. So this looks like a success, but let's double check that we can see it in there. So we go to our results folder. We go into our blobs, into our results folder, and we can see that we have our CSV file here. If we open that, we can just copy this to clipboard, open a new tab, and we can see, if we zoom in a little bit, it says Arctic fox, and the probability was 0.99%. So great work. We created an end-to-end process there using both the Azure Custom Vision Service and an Azure Logic app. So once you get to the end of this and you've followed all the instructions and you've seen your output file, you'll get to the bottom of the page. One thing I just wanted to note, if we scroll up very slightly, is at the true box that we saw, you actually have a couple of options. You can continue on down and you'll do the output to the Azure Blob Storage account, or you can actually choose this option here. So if you have an Office 365 subscription, possibly with your university account, you can actually open this link here, which will take you to a different ending, if we want to call it that, for the Logic app. So if you have that Office 365 account, in the if true part, you can actually type in Outlook, choose Office 365, and then choose Create Email. Then you sign in, so you sign in with that Office 365 account, you send an email, and then one of the nice pieces is, because we have all of that information, you can actually send yourself a really personalised email. So there was an endangered animal spotted, and then it would say like Arctic wolf or walrus, and then in the body of the email it said the animal that was spotted at and a time and date. This was a wolf or a polar bear. It's the confidence of what we saw was there, and then you can also stick in the image URL, which then, if we scroll down and we take a look at what that looks like, endangered animal, Arctic wolf, and the confidence was 1, you can actually click on that link there and it will open up an image for you in a web browser, and so then you can see what image it was that was captured. So in case you have a moment and you want to do an extra little bonus little bit and you have an Office 365 account, you can actually get it to send you an email. Thanks everyone for joining this Train the Trainer call. Hopefully the content was really useful to take you through from end to end the 60-minute workshop. This included sections 1 and 2, which was the Azure Custom Vision Service, so creating the classifier algorithm, and then finally the Azure Logic app, where you can actually consume that into a business process, which is completely serverless. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions or any feedback, please submit it via pull requests or issues on the GitHub repository. Thanks a lot.